What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Project Lioness podcast. This is your host, Dr. Mel, and I am super excited to be joined by one of my favorite people on the planet right now, Kristin Rowell. And before we get into her journey and why I brought her here on this episode, y'all, I'm going to share this remarkable woman's background of how she got here today and why she's here with us. And then we'll get into the raw, real, meaty stuff. So Kristin is a former business litigator turned functional nutrition therapy practitioner, and she's the founder and CEO of Energetically Efficient. And she helps high-achieving, stressed-out professionals lose weight, increase their energy, and help them become far more efficient in their work. The clients that Kristin works with are ready for transformational change, and she works closely with them to guide them on their journey to becoming positive, energetic, motivated, fit, high vibrational humans. And y'all, this woman has a plethora of things that she has done. She speaks all over the country about nutrition and other wellness topics. And she is a marathoner and has run 25 marathons, you guys. And I'll include that in her bio and in the show notes. But welcome, Kristin, to the Project Lioness podcast. Super grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mel. I'm so happy to be here also.
Yeah. Now, for this episode, I know some people call you Chris, some people call you Kristin. What do you prefer?
Actually, I answer to both, so whichever easiest. I always say Chris is easier because it's less syllables.
Right. So. That's like the athlete in us. My whole name is Melissa, but don't tell anyone that. Now everyone's gonna know. But I like Mel. So
yeah, I love it.
Well, I wanted to bring you on, Kristin, because you and I go back a couple of years, and y'all, Kristin and I met. Of course, divinely through the universe. She, I know, is a big fan of Network Spinal, and you guys have probably seen her post about it if you follow her on Instagram, which I will include in the show notes. But her and I connected because she was having some clients that she thought would benefit from my care. And as a result, I started getting interested in what she was all about. And I just love your approach, Chris, about functional nutrition and food first and how food is really medicine. And sure enough, I found myself doing her amazing Radiant Detox, or Radiant Reset, I should say. Yes. My husband and I have done it a number of times now, and it's absolutely game changing. But just to give you guys background on how Chris and I met and why I'm bringing her on, because Chris, as you're learning, the Project Lioness podcast is all about raw, real truths and talking about health from that feminine, female perspective. So I'd love to hear for the listeners, let's start with what your personal journey has been. And I know you're an open book, but clearly you've got a background that is not functional nutrition. And I love hearing the come up of like people making those big life transitions. But tell us a little bit more about your journey and who you are and how you got to be who you are and where you are today.
I'd love to. Okay. So I just love that you mentioned the feminine, Mel, because I'm sure we'll get into all of that.
Of course.
It's not even language I could speak 10 years ago. I don't even know if it's language I could speak 5 years ago, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because to me, walking around this planet as a being who was very programmed and very much successful in her masculine, I was all about the hustle and the grind and the achieving and the working and the striving. Of course, if you look at someone who's a trial lawyer with 25 marathons and a professional bodybuilder, it's like, that wasn't, I wasn't in my ease and flow and receptivity and surrender for all of those years.
Yeah.
So I just love that you said that. So I was going along on my journey, like many people who have had a spiritual awakening, it's one of those things you can sort of only understand in hindsight. You don't really realize it when you're going through the process. So I'd say if I look back on my life, my spiritual awakening pretty much started about 2010, but I was very unaware of it. And it was when that year, I was married at the time, and I did an intervention on my husband with friends and family. And he went away to Hazelden for 28 days. And as part of his process at Hazelden, I decided to join the Al-Anon program. And in the Al-Anon program, which is the sister component to AA, I went to meetings every week. I went to meetings every week, literally for almost 10 years. And we would say at the very last step, which is also an AA step, had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, spiritual awakening? What? No idea. Totally clueless. Would just say it, be at the meetings. Something was working inside of me. I didn't know. So fast forward a couple of years, we get divorced. I decided to cope with my divorce largely by just putting my head in 1000% into work. So worked and worked and worked even more until the universe, which it always does, brings you all sorts of opportunities for you to have your own awakening. And in December of 2013 was when I fell and broke my right leg in 10 places. Wow. And I had 22 pieces of metal put in my leg about a week later at surgery at TRIA. Well, the surgery wasn't TRIA, but I was being seen by TRIA doctors. And so that was sort of a huge, obviously it was a huge event in my life, but it was one of those things that I look back in hindsight and realize that that was such a huge pivot point for me in terms of my trajectory career-wise, because it actually was the event that caused me to become curious about nutrition. I remember I started to see at the time, I don't know, not an NSA practicing chiropractor, another chiropractor who was practicing at a clinic related to the hospital I was being seen at. And he was an ultra runner. So I would see him every week for chiropractic and PT. And as he'd work on me, I was like, okay, so when you're running these 50-mile races, these 100-mile races, like, what do you eat? Because of course I had done plenty of marathons by that point. And when he started to tell me about how he would consume fat, I'm like, huh? And so he's like, I eat macadamia nuts. I have these nut butters. I have avocado. He eats some carbohydrate, but it's what caused me to start get curious. So fast forward in my journey, and I was in another relationship for a couple of years, and that ended at the end of 2017. And it was a very difficult ending for me. Basically, the short version is I found out this person is not at all who I thought they were. And I was devastated. And literally, like, I had already been through a tremendous amount of heartache with my divorce. This wasn't that much heartache, but I was just devastated because I really, really loved this person. And so I got out of that in November of 2017, and I finally started meditating. I say I came to meditation out of desperation. And I think a lot of people get to meditation out of desperation. It was what brought me to my knees to say, okay, hang on a second. You've been in some form of therapy at this point for 10 or more years, maybe 20 years. I mean, I'd been in therapy for a long time, and I come from a very, great family, all the things. And obviously not every single family, I should say, has issues. So I just didn't know what mine were when I started therapy. So I tell you all that because the meditation is what really got me to figure out my soul's journey. So as I was in meditation, I hired a meditation coach. I started meditating on my own. And throughout 2018 and 2019, essentially, I was spiritually called to leave the practice of law and go back to school for nutrition and leave and start to follow. I say, when I was lawyering, I loved it. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, I'm going to do this until the day I die. I'm going to retire as a lawyer. I love lawyering. I love arguing in court. I love winning. I love all of the things that come along with it. And I can say confidently now that my lawyer career was very much about my ego. Yeah. And this new career is very much about my soul.
Wow. I love, I knew there was a reason why I had you on. They were definitely like soul sisters in that sense, where it's so fascinating how the universe literally provides sometimes what I say is like the feather, the brick, the truck, where instead of maybe listening to the tap on the shoulder, we get these moments where it's like, okay, I can't not listen to this. Or we think that the fractured leg, or for me, it was a rugby injury to my shoulder that brought me into, chiropractic. In the moment, it can feel so devastating. And yet when you take that soul lens and you take that overview pictures, you said beautifully, sometimes you don't connect the dots until you look backwards in time. It's those moments that really are our wake up call and cracking open to another version of ourselves that's probably been within us this whole time. And the universe has really funny, interesting ways of like cracking us open and accelerating that process. So I love that you spoke to that. So that was 2018. You chose to make that shift.
Or yeah, it was It was 2017. I started meditating and I finally became ready to leave in 2019. So I left in the summer of 2019. And I have to share, Mel, that when you said feather, brick, and truck, I use that all the time because clearly my leg break was my truck. But what's funny is I had my brick in September of that same year and I ignored it. I don't know what my feather was because it obviously wasn't significant enough. But in September, I was in a girlfriend's wedding. We were in Kauai and I went and tried to surf. And I used this paddleboard to try to surf. And there were these 6-foot swells. I thought I was going to be so tough. I'm like, I'm strong. How hard can this be? The answer is hard, by the way, if you've never tried to surf.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had wiped out one time and I thought, okay, well, that's annoying. The board kind of flew away from me and this kind of felt like a total cluster. Next time when I fall, because I'm going to try this again, I'm going to go back out there. And this time I'm going to try to hold on to the board when I fall, as if that was going to save me. Also, not brilliant at all. So when that fall happened, a few minutes later, when I was out with the board, I went spinning with this board and there's a fin on the bottom of the board. It drilled me so hard on the top of my right leg. I had a hematoma through my entire hamstring in the back. I basically couldn't walk for a few hours. And of course, because I was in my program of I'm an achiever, I have to do what I set out to do, I came home and ran the Twin Cities Marathon 2 weeks later. There's no way I should have done that. And my leg from mile 18 on hurt pretty bad. I've still finished it and did fine, but I was in a lot of pain. And so I think the universe was like, okay, you didn't listen to us. We apparently have to make this louder. Mm-hmm. Now we're really going to knock you on your butt. And that's what happened in December. Mm-hmm. It was only 3 months later that that accident happened.
Yeah. It's, and I love that you had that experience in the ocean. I am also in a journey of learning how to surf. Like anywhere there's an ocean, I'm trying to take lessons and get a board. So that's like, of course, the synchronicities. But I always say that Mother Ocean and Mother Earth has very powerful ways of humbling you. And talk about feminine energy. I mean, Mother Ocean is like extremely powerful feminine. And it's just fascinating how, we can go through these experiences and yet still our ego, or I say our defense mechanisms and our ways of protecting that are so strong until literally we are surrendered and humbled to our knees, or in your case, spinning through the ocean on a board to really get like, hey, there's a whole nother way of doing life here. And maybe it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it is. Right? Yes.
Yes. And I love that you also said and reminded me, because I had forgotten that water is so feminine, because here I'm a Leo. Lion.
Yeah, fire.
Fire. I've associated with that all the time. Come to find out several years ago when I finally had my full chart read, I'm a Cancer rising, water, and I'm a Pisces moon, water. So I'm this watery feminine like inside, but I was so programmed to be in my masculine for so long that I didn't even realize it. And so I've had this deepening journey. I've worked with several business coaches. I've hired a love coach. I've done all sorts of things to deepen into my feminine. And I've just really loved being able to play with the energetics of that because I think it's so fun.
How have you found, so I'm curious to expand more into that. How have you found, going from being a lawyer, which I'm imagining is like, you definitely have to put the pants on in some regards.
Right? Oh, yes.
I've worked with a lot of lawyers and people in the legal realm, and it's interesting to work with their nervous system. But how have you found like stepping into more your business now, helping you expand that part of yourself? Because you're an entrepreneur, and a lot of people who listen to this, they're women, they're entrepreneurs, they are in professional roles, they're in leadership roles. How have you found entrepreneurship as that next layer of expanding into your feminine? And then we can get into more of like how you help people do that and clients do that.
Yeah, great question. So I was very unaware for a very long time the significance of balancing, tending to, and just noting my central nervous system. In fact, I would say, and you know this because you've done the Radiant Reset cleanse, we can't have caffeine during that cleanse. So I have been breaking up with caffeine quarterly for over 20 years. I keep doing it. I went one time where I went a whole year without coffee, but I always come back to it because my physical system, my central nervous system has always been wired and programmed to be addicted to the chemicals of stress. Yeah. My body's literally for my whole entire life been addicted to cortisol. And what I finally discovered as I was doing some work with a practitioner in a course I was taking a few years ago is I realized when I was just exploring my own birth story of how I came into this world, my mother was 3 weeks overdue with me and we had toxemia, preeclampsia, and we both almost died. So of course I came into this world in fight or flight in extreme stress. And I think my central nervous system literally never recovered until I stumble upon NSA and acupuncture and these other modalities I do literally in the last 4 or 5 years. And so I finally now have broken up with caffeine again for the good as of several months, 6 months ago. And I feel like I'm finally at this point tending to my central nervous system and actually healing it. So in terms of answering your question, I would say that my own expansion in getting into my feminine, in being more in the body and not being so much in my head has been it's a requirement for me that I spend time in meditation every day. I have to. Yeah. If I don't, my default is to play in my head all day. It is so easy. It's how I'm wired. Most humans are this way. We think that's what we need for success. And the reality is the best CEOs spend more time actually visioning, actually meditating, tending to their central nervous system. I sat outside in my pajamas this morning in the sunlight, meditating in the sun, holding my little cacao with coconut oil, just holding it because I was a little chilly. But I had like the download of a whole book, came in here and started writing a whole book. Like that's really where the wisdom comes. The wisdom is in us already. It's just that we're so disconnected from source. We don't open up that channel to receive all the divinity. So I would say, kind of putting a bow on it, but we can go as deep here as you want because I love this stuff. I work now and create now from my heart as opposed to my head, from my soul as opposed to my ego, from my body as opposed to my mind. And that has been a huge journey for me because it is not, it's just not something that was innate in me ever. I didn't, I grew up as an athlete. I didn't grow up as a dancer or someone who was very sensual. Yes. Those weren't things I identified with. I had a breast reduction when I was 22, for God's sakes, because I was clearly like cutting off a lot of my femininity because I was afraid of my own sexuality in so many ways. And so it's just been so fun to explore.
And it's so potent and powerful when you can play with it and actually see like the results that we thought would come through so much effort, but that's the quantum field, right? When you're aligned with that and your soul's essence, things can drop in. Like I tell clients, listen, if you give yourself that space, whether it's meditation or I've been getting into a lot more dance, right? Like when I dance in the more feminine way, I just, like you said, I get the download for the next program or the download for the book or the perfect connection that you were seeking through adrenaline actually drops into your inbox. Because you've given yourself that space for your nervous system to actually receive, which receivership is a feminine quality. But I also love that you share your journey of like, hey, listen, this hasn't been all butterflies and rainbows. Like you were born steeping in like a pool of cortisol, a pool of stress. So of course, just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's actually efficient for your system, right? Just because something you're used to it, you're used to running on adrenaline, you're used to running on cortisol, doesn't actually mean it's efficient for you long term. And so I love that you share that vulnerable piece where like, hey, listen, I wasn't born in my feminine being. And I think that gives, from what I see in you and your evolution, like that gives you so much more wholeness and embodiment and like relatability because you've lived in that world and then you've chosen to start to explore this. It's not that you were just born into the feminine. And I think that's a real thing I see with women who listen to this is they're like, okay, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. How do I'm so used to this driving, right? I'm so used to this. This is so familiar. How can I start to trust this over here? So I know meditation and there's other things that I know you do and you and I both do, but what are some maybe things you can speak to if you're just starting to like really trust your feminine or learning how to expand your capacity to trust your feminine? What are some things that have worked well for you? And then I know maybe food is a part of that, right? Because food is medicine, but what would you share with people in that sense? If they're like, okay, I know this is my next step. I can't keep living this way. I'm burnt out as shit. This is kind of my next calling.
I'd love to share this. So I know this goes hand in hand with what you're doing in meditation, but even if you put meditation aside for a moment, one of the biggest things I think we can start to do is to literally practice how we can have more awareness. Awareness about what we're doing, awareness about what we're thinking, awareness about what we're watching, awareness about what we're listening to, awareness about who we're spending time with, awareness about what we're saying yes to, awareness about what we're saying no to. Like literally start watching yourself because you are not her. You are the beingness that watches her. And so once you start to become more of that beingness, you can't you can't change any sort of behaviors or take responsibility for them or actually take action on them unless you're first aware of them. I like to give the most simple example, and I'll laugh because there happens to be a banana sitting right here, which is very rare. If I actually want to peel back the layers of this banana so that I can see what's underneath behind the skin, the first step in actually being able to do that is I have to actually know a banana is here. You have to actually know that there's even an issue. And most people are walking around having no idea that they're a banana or an onion or an orange. I'm just thinking of things you could peel, right? They don't even know that that's something that they could even start the process of. And truly that process starts with becoming aware of what you're doing. I'm not even asking for you to figure out why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Don't even say why. Just notice it.
Yep.
Why do I do that every day after work? Why do I hit snooze a lot? Why do I get up super early every day? Why do I go to this gym class on this day? Why do I wash my towels on Tuesdays? I say that because I literally have a friend who she washes towels on Tuesdays. And I tease her and I say, you realize this is a learned behavior from your mother and this is why you do it, but it makes her happy, so she does it. Fine.
Right.
I tease her because I'm like, it's something for you to just become aware of, because if we don't become aware of the things we do, all we are doing is walking around as a programmed robot.
Yes. Sorry, I was like, preach. It is.
Right?
It's programmed, like not even the day you're born, but literally through genetics and epigenetics and through the literal ancestral patterning of your lineage and the culture.
Yes.
Like we are steeped in it. It's so much easier to be programmed than it is to not, honestly.
Yes.
In our culture.
I tell people all the time, you had two parents. They each had two parents. All four of them had two parents. You don't have to go back many generations to realize how much cellular garbage you inherited, because I assure you, based on where we're at in consciousness, most of our parents didn't do deep therapy. Their parents certainly didn't do deep therapy. The generation about that, no one was talking about the stuff you and I are talking about until this generation. Truly. Yeah. So because consciousness has been rising so quickly, we have this opportunity, and I think it's the most amazing time to be alive that we've ever witnessed in our history, is we have this opportunity to expand and to grow and truly become more of our beingness than our doingness. Yeah. And I say all the time that I've been on the journey to become a human being and not a human doing for I don't know how long, but it's work, because our society rewards, programs, and celebrates doingness.
Yes, 100%.
I used to say things when I was lawyering like, I can sleep when I'm dead. I mean, the dumbest stuff. The dumbest stuff. I was proud that I would, in Minnesota, in the dead of winter, get up on a Friday, run 20 miles, and still be at my desk, showered and ready by 9 a.m. in the morning, because I was training for a marathon and I had to go to my lawyer job. And it's like, do you understand how cortisol pumping? I certainly had not had breakfast yet. I was probably drinking black coffee at my desk, and I wore it like a badge of honor. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
It's wild because our society celebrates that.
Yeah. This is such a great topic. I think, one thing I was reflecting on and what you're sharing recently was, everyone has their version of what they perceive, quote unquote, trauma, or those waking up or fracturing moments, or use whatever word you want. Right. And everyone has a different way of defaulting. And I look at that from the nervous system. Some people, they go into fight mode. Some people, they go into flight mode. Some people, they go into fawning or people pleasing or freeze mode. They collapse. And it's interesting because, I see clients, a lot of the times I'll see women where it's like the fawning and the people pleasing and just kind of bending over backwards and not listening to their boundaries, right? Not becoming aware of why they do these patterns. And so I was like, it's interesting because if you default into fight mode, which is like, I'll do it at all costs, like I will negate my heart, I'll go into my head and I'll just drive and I'll just push through. It's interesting because that default in your nervous system is rewarded in our culture. And yet we see the accolades and we see the trophies and we see whatever. And from the outside, cool, that's what our culture has said is important. But yet on the inside, people's systems are breaking down. Literally, their lives are breaking down, their relationships are breaking down. And we don't always see it right away, but it's so crucial, like you said, to just start to become aware of like, why do I do that? And one thing you mentioned too that prompted me to say this is becoming aware of your language and your conscious language of how you're speaking about yourself, how you're speaking about life, or the little things you say, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Is that, you're probably going to be dead if you don't sleep. Like now, right? And that's big. That I see that big time in more the ego-driven chiropractors where, they're on a mission, and I get it. And there's still this ego involved where it's like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. There's people to serve. I'm like, until there's not, because you haven't served yourself. So I'm curious if there's anything more to add to that. But I'm hearing like the awareness of your thoughts, the awareness of your language, the awareness of your behaviors. But anything else that you're hearing in that?
Yeah. So the awareness for sure. And then also just taking responsibility for that and then taking action. I always say those 3 steps for the triangle of growth: awareness, responsibility, and action. And we can't take action on anything we're not aware of. So it starts with awareness, but action could be, opening up a book or reading a book or listening to a podcast episode that has something in there for you, starting to like search for podcasts or books about like feminine energetics or things like that, if that's of interest to you, or look for online courses in that regard. But even simpler than that, it could be simply, I tell people, especially as it relates to food, next time you go to the grocery store, just buy one thing that's different. One thing that's going to be more supportive, that's a more real food item, instead of going to the store and getting all the same stuff off the shelves that you normally do. And I ask people this when they start working with me. I'm like, how much of the stuff in your cupboard right now are things that your mom also bought?
Yeah.
And you were raised with, and you don't even know why you buy them, but you do it because you're so programmed to just have this stuff in the house because it creates some level of safety in you.
Yeah.
Because you see that stuff as food because it's what you were raised with. So I desire, whether it comes to food or lifestyle practices or energy, I really desire with my clients to cause them to become more conscious about everything they do. I want them to become so conscious about what they are doing in their waking hours that they can't go back to, the proverbial sleep. And I don't mean sleep like in the bed. I mean proverbial sleep of programming. I want them to be that conscious. And so when you can be that conscious about all of the different choices you're making, you can't help but not change. I mean, you've been through, like we talked about with the Radiant Reset, you have to be so intentional about what you're putting in your body.
Oh, yeah.
And then the experience of doing that, you're like, holy cow, I feel good. Holy cow, my bowel movements are amazing. Wow, do I have a lot of energy? Wow, does my skin look incredible? You start to actually experience the consequences of those intentional choices, which I think is what life's all about.
And there's no going back. Like, I think once you experience that, whether it's doing a reset, like what you've created so beautifully, or just becoming aware of your own thoughts. I mean, we as human beings have the beauty and sometimes the curse of having a prefrontal cortex where we get access to becoming conscious of our consciousness. And I have found that the more aware I become in how I can create my reality and not become a byproduct of it, you really can't go back, because you realize that we're supposed to thrive. Like, humans are meant to thrive. We're not meant to live in survival all the time. And when you tap into that level of thriving more consistently, you set new standards for your life. You set new baselines of, you know what? I am worth this. I am going to go, I don't want to say strive, but this is what I desire to live into more often than not. And yeah, I found like you can't go back. When I've done the reset multiple times, I'm like, holy smokes, like I want bowel movements like this every day. Right. And if you guys don't know, I can drop it in the show notes. Kristin has an amazing Radiant Reset. You guys have probably seen me post on social media, which is why, bringing her on more than just talking about food, but her reset is absolutely amazing. Yeah. Your reset is also one of the reasons and ways that I've been able to come off caffeine, because I lived on that as, chiropractic school. I would be drinking black coffee at 8 p.m. just to get through boards, just to get through studying until midnight, 2 a.m. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I don't know. You just get through, but then you realize, oh my gosh, there's so much that caffeine actually masks. There's so much. I'm still drinking decaf coffee, but I've made a lot of progress, because I was the person that would drink bulletproof coffee all day and not eat anything. And, now I'm getting to reset my hormones with that. I've also done bodybuilding. That's a whole nother thing. But anyway, my point with wrapping this up is when you start to choose yourself and what Kristin is saying, when you start to choose these things, you really actually see like, wow, you are your best healer. Like you can literally heal and create your life. And there's no going back from that. And I think you have a responsibility to that, especially if you are a mom or you're serving other people. Like, why wouldn't you want to show up at your best for why you were put on this planet? Like why your soul incarnated here.
Yeah, I love all of that so much. And I want to circle back to just giving some props to what you do, because part of all of this and what we're talking about, and you said it so beautifully earlier, is we have to have the capacity to receive within our central nervous system all of the amazing goodness that we're bringing into our life. So my central nervous system, when I was hopped up on coffee, running all those miles in the morning, in boardrooms in suits, telling men what to do all day, I wasn't exactly able to even have the level of receptivity and femininity and surrender that I am now. And I do NSA every week. I mean, I'm going every single Saturday. It's something that go here in Nashville. I used to go twice a week at home.
Oh, I'm glad you found someone there.
I did. She's amazing. And I'm so grateful. And I feel like I'm watching myself in terms of the softening that I'm having in my central nervous system and my ability to be in rest and not so just forcing, hustling, and grinding. Those are the words that always come to mind as like the opposite of surrender and receptivity and femininity.
Yeah. And I think that's, I'm going to highlight what you said when for those of you listeners and the audience, if you're hearing us saying like, well, I'm hearing all this and that sounds great. And sure, I'll start becoming aware and meditating. There's the conscious rewiring. And then this is the way I see it. And I'm curious, Kristin, how you see this, but I see it as like there's conscious neuroplasticity, there's conscious rewiring as far as choosing to buy something different at the store, choosing to do this. And simultaneously, what Kristin's saying in the work that I do in the nervous system, there can be these physical patterns and nervous system wiring that sometimes you can't always access with your conscious mind. And so that's where doing meditation can help you drop into the subconscious, working with someone who can help you tap into the subconscious stuff in your body that you don't realize is driving these programs of literally the lens of how you view life. Like I joke and say you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are, and you are a vessel that has a nervous system, that has some wiring that sometimes it's beneficial to do some somatic work or physical work and have that guidance. Not that the practitioner is fixing you, but helping you tap into what's already there,
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because I say it all the time too. You don't see the world as it is. You see it as you are. And it's very, very true. And there's lots of people walking around that are wearing 64 pairs of glasses on them with that many distortions of lenses, and they're very unaware of it. And the goal is to remove as many of the glasses as possible so we can see the world as clearly and from this high vibrational lens as we can. I'll share this brief story with you because I think you'll find it interesting just in terms of modalities. So I do all sorts of modalities. I do NSA, I do regular chiropractic, I do acupuncture, I'm in meditation masterminds, I do frequency work. I love it all. And there was a very deep frequency work session I was doing with one of my mentors. I'm in this mastermind. There's 9 of us, and we meet every other Sunday. It's like a 6-month container, 5-month container, something like that. And one of the first Sundays in our last semester of it, the topic was the addiction to stress and drama. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That sort of resonates with me. And I would not describe myself as having any sort of an addiction to drama. I don't watch television or anything, but the addiction to stress, yes. I was like, yep, I'm addicted to it. And I just felt it when she said it. And so she's going through this whole teaching and I'm listening. And then she gets into the meditation part. And typically for the meditation, we all turn our cameras off of Zoom and everyone sort of lays down. Now, I don't think I heard a minute of what she said and I immediately passed out, which my higher self will kick out my, small s self, my ego, so that I can integrate and receive as much of the work as possible, because otherwise my mind just gets in the way. So she did this on a Sunday and I had to listen to the recording several times because I have no idea what she said when she got to me. I was like the second or third person that she worked on. And when she got to me, she goes, whoa, Kristin, oh my gosh. She's like, this addiction, it's stress. She goes, actually, for your body, it's specifically cortisol. Like you are addicted to cortisol. And I'm telling you, Mel, I went years with having irregular periods, not getting a cycle. I mean, my hormones were messed up for so long, and I was so unaware that my lifestyle created that because of the, running and then fasting and then black coffee and then not eating, all of that. I did that for years as a lawyer. And so she worked on me and was like, this is significant. The next day we started the cleanse. Okay. This was last October. And I had to come off coffee because I hadn't been off it yet. That first day, because of the work she did on me yesterday and me getting off coffee, the combination of like releasing my addiction to cortisol, I had a major purge and I vomited like 11 times that day.
Whoa.
It was significant. So for people who don't know, like when you do a plant medicine journey, like an ayahuasca or some sort of thing, and you purge, these distortion patterns are revealed. That's literally exactly what happened to me when she did that work on me about my addiction to cortisol and stress. And it is truly, I think, what's allowed me to not actually have an interest in going back to coffee. I haven't done it yet, which is wild because I used to go back to it in between cleanses all the time, all the time.
And it's, it speaks to the intelligence of the body, right? Like we think, oh my gosh, you're purging, you must be sick. It's like, no, the body has intelligent mechanisms to literally get rid of data and information that is no longer it served its purpose for a time. And then now you are expanding and evolving into probably a more authentic version of you. And so this is what I tell my practice members that you're speaking to, which I love, is like your body is so intelligent. It's going to do what it needs to do in order to maintain that alignment into what you're expanding into in this, call it new version, expanded self, more of your soul's essence, more of your wholeness, whatever is there. It's like, okay, Control Alt Delete. And so that can happen through vomiting. I see a lot of people, they break out in their skin. They have diarrhea. But yet in it, it's like and I'm sure this was your case, knowing your consciousness of like, oh, cool. Like this is uncomfortable, but this is great. Like my body's, so I love that shift in like, your body's not sick. It's intelligent and it's doing what it was designed to do. And what a gift that you had that session to then boom, just drop in and your body's like, all right, cool. Let's go. We've got the resources. We're in a more balanced state. Let's push this out and evolve.
Absolutely. And it's so funny. You just reminded me of that day. I purged in the morning and I had like 5 or 6 purges and I was like, oh my God, yes, I'm getting it out. This must be really intense. And then that afternoon I went to my AK chiropractor, my applied kinesiologist chiropractor, who's very, very, very spiritually gifted. He worked on me and I see him. I was driving 45 minutes to see him, or so, maybe it was a half an hour. In any event, I had to rush home because by the time I walked in my door, I barely made it to the toilet and purged again after he worked on me, just because I was getting so much out as my consciousness was rising. And I was so happy about it because I knew it was all for me. I didn't have I knew I wasn't sick. I knew it was a purge that was happening because of this work that was done, which was just so exciting. And on that point, I was just thinking, just as a reminder for everyone listening, when we talk about this expansion and this consciousness and this next version of ourselves, keep in mind that you are 99.9999 energy. Okay. You're like a 1% or less physical body.
Yep.
And we spend all of this time obsessing about this freaking meat suit that is such a small part of who we are.
Yeah.
You are all of this energy. And just because you can't see it with your eyeballs doesn't mean it's not you and doesn't mean it's not there. And I just wish that in our outdated, stupid model of school, we taught kids about this, but of course it would empower them too much. So we don't, which is a whole different topic.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Exactly. But I say that because when Mel and I are talking about your expanded version or the next layer of you or the next consciousness, it's this energetic up level, and you have to do these physical things like chiropractic care, NSA, acupuncture, dancing, strength training, moving your body. You have to get your physical body to catch up with your lightness of being.
Yeah.
That is ascending way faster than your body can because your body is so dense.
Yep. Yeah. It's like connecting the density of the gravitational pull to become more radiational. And it's funny because I agree with you. We teach these things in like chemistry or physics. Like we talk about electrons and electron fields and the electron potentiality. And we talk about like energy. And yet It's like when we get to the macro scale, it's like we just forget it. And it's like, hello, if you look at an atom, it's mainly empty space. And we're made of atoms. So like, why do we go from that? And we accept that, right? That's science. And yet when we get to the human scale, it's like, oh, well, we're just going to be mechanistic beings and be robots. And it's like, no, these laws still apply. They still apply. So I love that you mentioned that. And yeah, that's a whole nother, my beliefs and perceptions of the educational system are, that's a book. That's a whole curriculum.
Yes. I hear you. I'm sure we are very aligned on many things in that regard.
Well, I know you've mentioned it just for our last couple moments together. And I know you've mentioned this a couple times and I have mentioned it, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about the Radiant Reset and maybe some other things that I know you have. I know you recently did you did a course on energy. Yes.
I did. It was so fun.
So Kristin if you guys, I'll drop her stuff in the show notes. She's got an amazing Radiant Reset. She's also has a course that she's created. And there's a lot of different ways you can work with her. I've, loved kind of us jamming over the last couple of years, but talk specifically a little bit more about if someone wants to start diving into some of this stuff and up-leveling their energy, whether it's the reset or other courses you have, like what is a great first step for them to start to dip their toes in with you?
Yeah, fantastic question. I appreciate it. So I would say the first step would be to consider joining us for the Radiant Reset. And I'm not sure when this episode will come out, but I do run the reset every quarter. So I typically do it the next one will be in April. Okay. And then there's one in July, and then there's one in October and one in January. So I do it each quarter. Cool. So it starts again on April 14th. And that's a great way to just experience some of my teaching and my frequency resonance and my, education and knowledge, I guess, with respect to the nutrition and the physical body. I talk a little bit about energetics in there. I just sort of like open the door for people. We do have a one day where it's actually an energy detox instead of what you're doing the physical. And that's also a very important component of it.
That is.
And so in the physical, just to give people a preview of what that would look like, is this is not a juice cleanse. This is you're eating lots of real food the entire 2 weeks. And the reason that it works and what most people don't understand about cleansing is in order to actually get toxins out of your body, you have to open up your phase 1 and phase 2 detox pathways. We also have phase 3 and they can get more sophisticated, but for the purposes of this cleanse, going into phase 1 and phase 2 is the most important. So there's a lot of foods on the no list. It's all the kinds of things you would think you can't have in a cleanse, like alcohol, sugar, you can't have any gluten, you can't have soy products, you can't have fruit that has molds on it, all sorts of things. But then there's a lot of yes foods that are just so good for your different organ systems. So cruciferous vegetables, citrus, dark leafy greens. There's that whole category of the liver-loving foods that has a really good mishmash. There's the sulfur foods, lean proteins, healthy fats, colon-cleansing foods. There's all sorts of things. So I recommend that. It's a 2-week experience, and it really does make you feel really good. And then what I offered for the first time earlier this year was a 3-day experience called Upgrade Your Energy. And then a lot of people that came into that, I sold into another 3-month container called Being Magnetic. So I was looking, and I had done some new moon manifestations last August on the new moon on August 4th of 2024. And I had done some new moon manifestations, and I listened to them again recently. And one of them was, I'm really asking Source for inspiration on a new program that I could create that, marries my skills with respect to the physical and the metaphysical. That's something people are excited about, that's sort of new, that isn't like anything I've taught before. And what came in through meditation in January was that course. And so it was my highest registration thing. It was just so fun because it was taking aligned action.
Yes.
So that is also, my website is being redone right now. So we'll have that available, but you can find out some of the stuff. Following me on Instagram is probably the best way because that's where I talk about all my offers.
Yeah. Cool. And you said you'll do another reset in July?
Yes. It'll be April and then again in July.
Okay.
Yep. It's usually after the 4th, but not that Monday after because I find that that's too hard for people.
Yeah.
So it's usually those last 2 weeks in July.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing you launch that and I was like, yes, I love that you're tapping more into like that teaching for you. Cause when you've mentioned it in the reset, when I took it the first time and then did it again, I was like, okay, I totally was like, yeah, I could see you teaching so much more in the energetics because it's important. Like, and you guys, there's tons of people out there who, they talk about spirituality. Like you're definitely going to find a lot of different mentors, but I think it comes through each of us so differently. And you're gonna resonate with who you resonate with. So So for those of you watching, yeah, Chris, this will probably come out after April, just where I'm at in my podcast. But for you guys, I'll drop Kristin's information in the show notes. You guys can check out her Instagram. I know she's very active on there, and that's where you can stay in touch with when she launches these programs again. I will say I absolutely love the Radiant Reset. I have never felt better. And that's why I wanted you to speak to it, because what I love is that it's not just don't eat anything and just juice. Like, you guys, this is a lot of food. Like, it's a lot of food, and it's good food. And like I have never slept so well. Like my bowel movements, like my energy, it's just amazing, you guys. And I know for people who are like, here cleanses, I would say it's a cleanse, but it is a reset. Like it's so much more than a cleanse, you guys. So definitely go check her out. Check out Kristin on Instagram, and all of her other amazing offers she has, especially if you want to tap more into this energy and being magnetic and all those things that are part of who we are. It's not separate. It is who we be. Honestly, it's who we be. Really. So why not learn how to like tap into that more?
Yeah. So I love that so much. I'm having the time of my life teaching that experience and leading these women through it. And they're all learning so much. So it's so fun. And like you mentioned a little while ago, part of what I think gives me credibility with a lot of the people in the executive or professional world is that I lived it.
You did.
They know that I'm not talking. I'm just, and this is no shade on someone who came from a world that didn't do that, but it's just that they can relate to me more because they're like, okay, this is someone who sort of transitioned a little bit into the woo-woo, but can actually speak from an intellectual standpoint about like, what is the science of it and why is this real and why should I even care about this?
Yes.
So that's been fun too.
Yeah, that's exactly. I love that you can speak to that lived experience. And I think lived experience can sometimes trump textbook learning because you've walked the talk and you know what it takes to step over that bridge and start to embody your energetics and your feminine, and you're not just speaking from a textbook. So I love that you brought that in, Kristin. As we wrap up, I'd love to know if there's anything else you want to share with listeners as far as maybe if they're feeling like, right now with the culture, things are expanding so quickly, like any words of wisdom or last piece of gift that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yes, I think the main thing that I'd like to leave people with is to remind everyone that truly at the end of the day, their job is to just be. Mm-hmm. That's what we came here to do. We came here to be. We didn't come here to force or to hustle or to push or grind or to achieve. We came here to be in our body, experience the range of human emotions, and truly like love our life. It's such a good time to be alive right now if you really can get into your body and enjoy it.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Kristin, for being here with us. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you check out what Kristin's got going in the show notes. Be on the lookout for her next release of all of her amazing programs. And as always, my friends, peace, love, and keep inspiring. Bye.
Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.